Hey, what is up everyone? Welcome back to another high-resolution Gundam review, and these don't happen that often, so that means I am super excited about this. Of course, this right here is the God Gundam, and this video would not be possible once again without those absolutely awesome people over at Hobby Link Japan. So if you're looking for a God Gundam of your own, there's a link down there in the description. Now here we go. So starting straight away with the box itself, and there is the box. Compared to some box designs, the high-resolution boxes are a bit on the plain side. It's just an image of the finished kit itself. On the sides, it's just a bit of a wraparound of that. On the bottom, we've got a picture of what it will look like in case it's stacked on a shelf that way. And around on the back is where all that info is. So there is some of the information from the back of the box in case you want to pause it and read that yourself. Of course, with the high-resolution models, just in case you don't know, they have an inner frame that comes pre-assembled. It's like an action figure. There is another bit of an image of what that looks like. I didn't actually take some video footage of what that looks like before putting it together because I put together straight away. I was too excited. But that's the gist right there. We've got that awesome super psychedelic halo effect there. Hopefully you can read that there if you want to read it. If you can't, well, there's a closer look for you. Just like it says right there, we do get a sticker for that chest energy multiplier part that comes on a sticker sheet just like we would have saw with the eye for the Sisqueed. Pretty cool. Apparently, the inner frame on this has evolved, so that means you get more articulation. I can tell you for definite that is true. It also feels lighter, like it has less die-cast parts in it. A lot less die-cast parts. I think I can only find some in the feet, but we'll talk about that later. We got some more images of what it looks like, what it can do. Kicking off a sweet kick right here. We've got that forearm deployment gimmick. As you can see, the articulation on this looks impressive, because it is. This kit comes with replaceable finger parts. More info then down here on that articulation. As you can see, it is crazy off the charts awesome. Looking like it can fold its arms. That makes me very happy. We've got some lovely shining fingers, or in this case, because of the God Gundam, that's the God finger. And we got a bend at the toe and some nice rubber stickers from the sole of the feet. And as someone that uses a glass desk to review these things, that makes me happy. Look at this. Look at this. He's not going anywhere. That is brilliant. Lastly then, we do have a core lander for this guy as well, but anyway, that's enough about the box. It's what's on the inside that counts. And that right there is the high-resolution God Gundam out of the box, snapped together with a little bit of extra effort. And the little bit of extra effort in question is just the panel lining you're seeing right there. What I did was use a gray panel lining marker, that is this one right here, on the whites and a black on everything else. Usually I don't mention what I use, and I mean to, because some people might want to know, but if you want to know, that's exactly what I used. For some reason, even on the box, Bandai does not panel line these kits. I'm not quite sure why. Maybe they're meant to be a just snap it onto the armor and leave it kind of thing, but personally I feel they definitely require it. It's a super easy little step, and it definitely brings out all that smaller detail like on the face right there. Otherwise it's going to end up looking like the Astray right here. It does look awesome, but you can't really see the detail in its faceplate and all that. Those two iconic Gundam lines completely lost in there without that bit of lining. But honestly, as you can see right there, this is another impressive looking high-resolution kit. So now giving the high-res God Gundam the full 360-degree spin so you can see every angle, every aspect of this kit. And the first thing that I noticed, or you would notice about this, is that the plastic on this is all in that super high gloss. This is very typical for a high-resolution kit, and so is the redesign. This is definitely not your standard God Gundam. High-resolution kits tend to be given a bit of a redesign that looks a little bit more organic, a little bit more human. Well, like a big old ripped dude, honestly. But all in all, this is one impressive silhouette. As for colors on here, we've got two shades of white. That's that super pure white, as well as that very light gray, or an off-white towards gray, whatever you like to call that. We have two shades of red on this. That's the super bright red, like you can see up on the shoulders there. A little bit of a darker one that's on the midsection. That is actually part of the figure, not part of the model kit section. Just to clarify, this section right here, that's the part that is part of the figure. This red up here, as well as back here and on the feet as well, that's all the model kit parts. You snap onto that. Continuing through the colors, we've also got that hyper glossy blue, just one shade of that. And as for what we can see there on the verniers, this dark gray right here, that's more of a semi-matte, definitely changing the textures compared to the rest of the armor. That is exactly the same as what you can see on the hands. Finally then, finishing it all off is that hyper glossy yellow that is on the back of the arms, on the chest, as well as up on that V-fin crest antenna on the head. The minor detailing on this is great, especially on the Vulcans on the sides of the head, as well as the machine guns up there on the shoulders. I almost forgot one color, that is that clear green inside of the head, and if you're wondering about the eyes, those are part of the figure, no sticker here, it's just painted on there. Anyway, I cannot finish up with the aesthetics without a bit of a size comparison, and first off, there it is beside a standard 1/100 kit, that is the Master Grade Granddaddy 3.0, so as you can see, it's about average height. There it is beside a small 1/100, which is the F91. Also there it is beside a massive 1/100, which just dropped something, and that is the Master Grade Sazabi Verka. Next up, beside some high reses, and oh, gently does it. Oh, don't put him down too hard. Okay, yeah, just adjust him a little bit. So that is the high resolution Barbie, and I did give this a very good review when it came out first, but this has aged so badly that even just looking at it, breathing near it, farting near it, it will fall apart. This is the most hand grenade I have. As far as I know, this is the worst. So how far these kits have come from this one all the way to this one is mind-blowing. There isn't nearly as much metal in them as there was before. This is quite heavy, and also the armor barely holds onto it at all. This is extremely light, and the armor is going nowhere. Next up then, and next in the line of most likely to fall apart on me, is this right here, which is the High Resolution Wing Zero Custom EW, and although it isn't quite as bad as the Barbatos, it does have its fiddly bits. And speaking of Wings fiddly bits, the premium Bandai version of it right here fixes every single one of them, funnily enough. So this is where they started getting so much better. Next up then in the high resolution comparisons is the Astray right here. A kit that I absolutely and utterly love to bits. This thing is legendarily awesome. I love it. So how does the God Gundam compare? Better or worse? I guess we'll find out soon. And of course, we don't just have one version of the Astray High Res, we also have the edgy and awesome Astray Noir. Again, just as awesome as this guy, just with a lot more bits piled on top, but still awesome. So now moving on to the accessories, and here's the high-res God Gundam with absolutely everything that it comes with. So what we get is a sheet of these sticker-style decals, the Hyper Mode Halo Effect Ring, your standard base adapter, the 2 beam katanas known as the God Slash, and a bunch of swappable fingers, as well as 2 alternate hands, which are for the God Finger. So first up in here, we've got those decals. As for why this is warped like this, it just came out of the box like that. The same I've found with the ones that came with the high-res Astray. It must be the way they print these particular decals. I'm not a big fan of these, I'll tell you why in a second. First off though, there's a quick zoom in on what we get in here. Most of these say either Neo Japan, Domon, etc. We've got some symbols as well as these kind of accent ones which go with the lines of the kit. All in all, these look nice, they're nicely designed, but I find these are a bit overly glossy, the way they catch the light and whatnot. I know this is to go with the gloss finish of the God Gundam here, but I don't feel it works out. Also, the edges of these particular style of sticker style decals are a little more apparent than other style stickers, I find. These really do kind of stand out, and you're always going to notice the edge on them. There are some large ones on this, and if they are like the ones we saw on the Astray, they're easy to catch bubbles underneath as well, and all in all, they are a bit, I don't know, they feel a bit on the cheap side, and that isn't even talking about the design of them themselves. This one is completely subjective, but I'm not sure about that font there, as well as the placement. That Neo Japan up on the shoulder, as well as that huge Neo Japan down on the crotch. The kind of inky brushstroke kind of writing looks like, well, they try hard to be cool brother of Comic Sans, and all in all, this is such an awesomely redesigned version of the God Gundam that I feel they look a little bit tacky, a little bit garish. They just don't, I don't know, they don't suit his awesomeness, in my opinion. But of course, they're totally optional. As for the hands, the God Gundam is rocking. These are swappable fingers. That is for these sections here. The thumb is articulated at 1 and 2, 3 points. So that of course is a ball joint down here that allows for it to do that. And then just at the 2 kind of finger joint sections. As for the swappable fingers, we've got these fists that you've seen already. Some widespread fingers, like this right here. Looking awesome, looking dynamic. We have a set of open palmed hands with the fingers together. That's these ones right here. And then we've got these ones for holding the beam katanas, but I'll take a look at those while we're taking a look at the katanas. Next up then, we've got a completely separate pair of hands, which are these ones that are burning red, or more of a transparent orange, but those of course are for doing the God finger. These are a completely separate pair of hands. So in order to use those, you just pop off the entire hand like so. And they just attach with this ball joint here. So they don't have as much articulation as the standard set of hands. Get in there. There you go. And as part of doing the God finger, this whole segment can pull forward over the hand like this. We do have articulation at the little thumb on this section. These little claw sections around back, these are on ball joints so they can pull up like that. These guys are also articulated just at this point right here, so that can get it all ready for that God hand punch. Next up then, here we've got the pair of beam katanas, which are the God slash. This definitely is one vigorous effect part right here. This looks awesome. Actually, the whole concept of this is absolutely awesome. A beam katana, basically like a beam saber, but what can make it cooler? It's a katana. So these should be instantly awesome, right? Well, there is one bad aspect that kind of makes them not so awesome out of the box. Both of mine came out of the box somewhat bent. It is very subtle, but it is very noticeable. If you've ever tried to straighten beams before, you can do that in hot water, but it is a bit of a tough job to get them absolutely straight. So if they don't come out of the box straight, well, 9 times out of 10, they're stuck that way, sadly. So as for attaching these, it is pretty simple. You just use those pair of fingers I just mentioned a little while ago. These are a smart design reminiscent of something we saw in the high-res Astray, and that means they don't clip on the same way as the rest of the fingers. They slide on like this, which makes them really easy to attach when a weapon is in those fingers. With some other kits like Master Grades, etc., this can be a bit of an issue clipping it on while still holding the weapon in the hand, but not an issue here. Once they are attached, they look great, besides the fact that these ones right here were bent out of the box, but they do look awesome, catch the light perfectly, and all in all, what can I say, a pair of beam katanas? That is badass. And the God Gundam has absolutely no problem whatsoever in holding onto them. So of course, when these are not in use, just pop off the beam, and they can be stored right here on the side skirting, like that. So next up then, we've got the halo effect for God mode, and this thing is fun! Look at the sparkles on that. 1, it's transparent. 2, it looks like a rainbow. And 3, it's got all of these. If I line that up right in the light there, you can see where they all are, but all of these catch the light awesomely. That is pretty cool. So we've got 2 holes right here. If you pop up the God Gundam's wings around back here, just like this right here, then these holes here will line up with these holes here, like so. And we have a couple of these little plug dealy dudes to insert those into those holes. So just line everything up, pop them in like so, make sure the wings are lined up right. That actually catches the light spectacularly. That is an impressive effect part. As this is a very unusual effect part and it's pretty damn cool, I'm gonna throw them up there on the shelf so you can see what that looks like on a shelf. How does it catch the light, etc. Because the lighting in this room is set up for at my review desk, it doesn't really point in this direction so much, so we are getting a bit of an effect there. It's definitely more noticeable in person than it is in the video, but this does look cool, catches the light nicely, and all in all, this is a pretty rad effect. I've never seen anything like this before, and this is awesome. That is staying on there. For me, staying on there. So the last thing we have in here is your standard handy dandy base adapter, so let's try it out. So as for how this works, this is a clip in then slide back, locking into place kind of one. I will mention be careful when putting this on. Don't put too much pressure on it because this super shiny high gloss plastic is incredibly brittle. It's broken twice already on me. We're down one of these little elbow armors as well as a bit of a crack right here in this plastic. So just like with Bandai's glossy plastic as usual, like with Omegamon, etc., this is extremely brittle. Be careful. So anyway, let's test this out, see if it's any good. Pop him on like so. Yeah, that does exactly what it needs to do and holds him in place. I almost forgot to mention it, but we also have the core lander in here. This does have these thrusters that move down and up. That just flips up like so to be the core lander. We've got some awesome flappy wing action, so down, up here. It's not a whole lot, but it is something. And on top of that, these all separate out. Once again, that is part of hyper mode. So that's it all spread out. That's it as normal. Also, nice clear green part in the cockpit. So anyway, moving on to the articulation, and I'm not gonna go through everything on this because this has an absolutely unprecedented level of articulation. I've never seen this many joints in a Gunpla before. This, without a doubt, is one of the biggest advantages to a high-resolution kit. Because the inner frame of this is a figure, not a model kit, it can have a whole host of joint types that a model kit cannot have. So that seems to be, right now, what the advantage is to the high-res versus, say, something like Master Grade. So like I said, I'm not going to go through every joint on this thing, or it will take me all week. Literally, it'll be a review just about the articulation. So I'm going to take the old school way that I used to do articulation, and that's the way I'm going to do it here. That is test poses, and I'll talk about some of the interesting aspects as I go along. So anyway, onto the test poses, and the first one I'm going to do is this one right here, which is the classic I'll Strike. Once again, I'll mention I will not be, and by once again I mean mention it because I didn't mention it already, I won't be using the Core Lander in any of these poses, so bye-bye. So when it comes to that classic Gundam Seed I'll Strike pose, this of course has no weapon, no shield. Well, by weapon it has no long-range weapon, so I kind of went with more of a kind of action pose in the sky. This has absolutely no problem pulling off any of this pose whatsoever, so I did give it a bit of a bend at the abs there to kind of make it a bit more dynamic, I guess. When you do see it from behind, it does split up the back a little bit like that, so once again, that won't look so great from behind, but from the front, it looks pretty awesome. All in all, this pulls it off absolutely awesomely, and there's nothing I can say here. It didn't have any issues with any of the bends. Anything really. All in all, it nailed it. The only thing I could actually mention about this, which is a little bit, could be odd for some people, and I'm sorry about all the brightness, it's just so you can see on in there. Basically because of the fact that the turning point of this joint is towards the front of the joint. That does mean there is a very long arc in its bend. So what I mean by that is, this is now where the hip should be, but when you bend it down like this, it comes completely away from where the hip would be. It does give it more of a bigger knee up, but it doesn't look so natural in there. So it's a bit of a trade-off whether you like that, or if you don't, that's up to you. So the next pose we're going to try, and that's for a crouch, is the Iron Man landing pose over here. So here we go. So anyway, this right here is what I got. So the biggest issue here, of course, is his tiny, itty-bitty short arms. So its legs are super long, its arms are quite short, so that means he just can't quite reach the ground. At the same time, we don't really get much head up the way sort of movement, so that means you can't really get him looking up the way in the way that we wanted for the pose. Besides that though, all the articulation is fantastic. I will mention if something falls off, I'll leave it off, so this decided to fall off while bringing the leg up, so not much I can do about that. And around here on back, we do have a nice bend at the toe. So all in all, that is pretty cool. It's just more of his dimensions that are the issue. Next pose. So anyway, moving on to the third pose, and the one I'm going to do here is a yoga pose called Warrior 1. Of course, that will test its lunge to the front, etc. And once again, if things fall off, I'm leaving them off for the whole thing, so it's gone. So there we go, and all in all, I have to say I am very impressed, especially with the balance on this. Very good. It does have some die-cast parts on the feet, not as much as we saw in other kits, so it is quite light. We've got an absolutely fantastic bend on the front leg there. On the whole, I did do a very exaggerated version of the pose, just so we can see what the bend in the leg is like. The toe bend back here, how much the ab crunch, or should I say like back ab crunch, or whatever you call it, can flex back. And all in all, this is pretty awesome. Of course, it can't raise its arms up without flipping the shoulder armor around, but all in all, look at that right there. That is impressive. Just for the sake of mentioning it at this point, it can pull off the splits, but that little front section of armor there does kind of keep it hovering in the air. You can move that somewhat to the front, move these somewhat to the back, but still it's never really gonna rest on the ground. And the most interesting joint in this right here is this extra one here I've never seen in a Gunpla before, and that is, hold on, come on, yep, this one right here. So the leg can bend at not 1 point, but 2, so it can come around like that if you wanted to. Interesting. And we lost some more side skirt. So as Bandai has kind of redesigned these high-res kits to look a little bit more, well, muscular than your standard Gundam kit, then this is the pose we're going to try and pull off right now, which is kind of hilarious. Personally, I want to know if it can do it or not. This is a classic Arnie pose, and I want to know if it can do it. So here we go. First up, gotta swap out those fingers. So as for this pose, it pulls it off without any issues whatsoever. There's such great articulation at the legs, toes, the abs, everything, that it's pretty awesome. I have to say, this is probably the best poseable Gunpla I've ever had to play around with, and you can probably tell by that because I'm spending so long doing it. But anyway, this is what it looks like in the end, and I think it looks great. So full rotation time. And it's just like, there's something so perfect about the movement on this. It's very human for something that is meant to be a robot, but that is one of the coolest aspects of the high-res kits. And I suppose that suits something like the God Gundam so well, because of the way the pilots do pilot the particular Gundams. It makes so much sense that this should be able to do such human movement. All in all, I'm so impressed. The only thing I'll really mention about this is that this rotation at the upper arm does not go all the way around, but that's no real big deal. And if you're like me and you're wondering whether or not this can fold its arms, there's no real point in me doing it because, well, it's right here on the box, so it can. So honestly, we can't finish off a pose off without some, well, a JoJo's pose. Of course. Damn. Personally, my favorite JoJo's pose is this one right here, the Killer Queen one, so we're going to see if we can pull that off, and I'm pretty sure at this point, it will have no issue whatsoever. So all in all, with this pose right here, it does do a fantastic job. There is only one little aspect I will mention, and that is the side-to-side pivot on the ankles could be a bit better. For a kit with so much articulation everywhere, this side-to-side pivot on the ankles is a bit of a letdown. As you can see right here, now that it's done, this cannot pivot all the way to lie flat on the ground, sadly. The other aspect I will mention is, yes, you can pivot that arm around with enough of a bit of a twist. It will go all the way around. And another thing I didn't mention so far in this, I don't think, maybe I did. This has rubberized feet, so we do get rubber stickers to stick on the bottom here. So even on a glass table, such as this grips exceedingly well. In this pose, a lot of those pads aren't touching the glass, so it may move around a bit. But all in all, the articulation on this is the best I have ever seen, hands down. However, I will mention that there is a bit of an illusion in this pose right here. It cannot touch its elbows, so it only kind of looks right from the front, but from here, not so much. But what can you do? So that right there is it for the review, and all I can say is I am absolutely and utterly gobsmacked, even godsmacked by this thing right here. All in all, the high-res God Gundam is another Gundarium tier high-res kit. It is up there with the high-res Astray as one of the best posing Gunpla out there. Once again, there is that bit of a debate as if this is Gunpla or not. It is and it isn't at the same time. These definitely have the advantage over other kits because they have a pre-built figure as their inner frame. So if you want kits that can pose, the high-res Astray and the high-res God Gundam right here are your best bets for some awesome off-the-charts posing. So anyway, that right there is it for the review, and this has everything down almost perfectly. So basically, it looks beautiful. The gloss finish looks great on everything, but I will mention that does make the plastic a bit on the brittle side, so you have to be careful with it. But honestly, if something will break, I will break it, so it seems like, for the most part, you're probably safe. The accessories in here are awesome. We have the removable core lander, we've got that awesome effect part for up on the back, we've got those god hand effect parts, and all in all, everything you'd want is in here. The only down point I found was that the beam effects were bent. That may not be in every box, actually. Let me know if yours are bent down in the comments. And when it comes to the articulation on this kit, this is the best kit articulation-wise I've ever laid my hands on. Before that, it was the high-res Astray, so if this is the way the high-res line is going, that we're going to get these kits with awesome figure inner frames that give us great articulation, then that is awesome because it does divide it, or should I say divide these kits away from master grade even more. If you know what you're getting, something with absolutely awesome articulation, I think that's pretty cool. So all in all, without a single doubt, to me, this kit right here, just like with the high-res Astray, is Gundarium tier. And at this rate, if all these high-res kits are this good, then each time one of these is released is an event worth being excited about. Anyway, as always, if you do want one of your own, there's a link down there in the description. You can get yours at HobbyLink Japan. As always, thank you so much for watching, and as always, make sure to come back for more Gunpla reviews. I'll see you next time. So once again, thank you to everyone who watches this video, and a special shout out to everyone who supports me in the channel members like Craig Jury and NQG420, and over on Patreon like Kaiser721, Forged Horizons, Vex Bulwick, Tyler Sanders, Frank04484, and Caleb Engelhart.